Gloria, tell us a little bit about your story and the work that you've done, and then finally your latest gig on Utopia.
And I think we all have stories to tell. I probably have a number of them.
Yeah.
My story in the theater started when I was 3, when my mother sent me to the Ethel and Gertrude Morgan dancing school. And my life being at dancing school, on Wednesdays after school, Thursdays after school, and Saturday mornings. And then we would dance at different events around Chicagoland. I'm talking, this was the 50s. But I have to share with you that by the time I was 10, I had danced on television a number of times. Lunchtime Little Theater, now I'm dating myself. Bozo Circus. I've jumped out of a pumpkin on the Lee Phillips show. And I did In My Easter Bonnet on the Bob and Kay show, which was Channel 5, used to be at the Merchandise Mart. So we're talking in the 50s and 60s. Then I quit dancing school because I wanted to hang out with my girlfriends and eat hamburgers and French fries at the local, when I was in high school. But when I was in high school, I got into theater. And I was in a number of productions. And I even won the Best Improved Actress Award in my senior year. Then when I was in college and I minored in theater, and I wanted to major in it. And I say this with endearment, but Sister Mary Holywater was like, "Oh, honey, what are you going to do with a theater degree?" Because I wanted to major in it. And she said that be a teacher, which is, as we know, a most honorable profession. And so I kind of let the theater thing go and became a teacher for the Board of Ed. And I taught school during the day. And I was always tinkering around with the theater, going to classes, going to, it was a body politic on Lincoln Avenue. Now I'm talking the 70s. And then I started going to law school. And I was teaching during the day, going to law school at night. And I, one day, heard that there were these classes at Second City. And Del Close was there. And I had Tuesday night free. So Tuesday night was the night I wasn't going to school. So one day I went in, I stopped in at Second City. This was 1974. And Del Close was doing the classes. And I said, I'd like to join the company. And he said, well, you know what? We're in the middle of the semester. He said, but I'll tell you what, I'll give you an audition. We'll see if you work out. So he sent me out into the lobby and he got all the men on stage and he told them, you are stranded on an island and there is a raft. And on the raft is this naked lady. And he brought me back into the theater and he said, play a game of red light, green light. And so I was playing the game of red light, green light, not knowing the intention that all these guys in the class had. I don't know. All I know is he was very nice and he said, okay, you can join us halfway through the class. So for a bit, it was intriguing, but I did work with Del Close during that time in the 70s at Second City. What happened was I graduated from law school. I passed the bar. I started working at the state's attorney's office, but that theater thing never left me. It was always tugging at my sleeve. And my mother used to say to me, you know, honey, to be a lawyer is to be an actor. And as an assistant state's attorney, it's true. You don't work at an office every day. You go to a courtroom, which a lot of drama in life happens in a courtroom, as you can imagine. And I'm sure some of you have experienced yourself. So, but the one thing that got me through where I am today and still doing this is what my mother said to me when I was teaching during the day and going to law school at night. one morning I was late. The 8:30 bell rang, and I came in at 8:32. And the principal pulled me into her office, and she said, listen, I know you got things going on in your life, but you got to be here on time. Anyway, how old are you? So you're like an older person in all these law school classes. And by the time you graduate, you're going to be 28. Aren't you going to be like a little bit older? Well, if you do the math, if you go to law school right after college, it's 3 years, you would you graduate when you're about 25. So it got me thinking, and that weekend I went home. Every weekend I go home and see my parents. I was living on the north side at the time. And I said to my mom, you know, Mom, maybe this law school thing isn't such a good idea. I mean, I was late for school. Miss Ryan pulled me into her office. She said, you know, you're kind of old. Aren't you the oldest one in the class? And my mother looked at me like, what? She said, Gloria, 28? You're going to be 28 anyway. Why not be 28 and a lawyer? Which, as a Sicilian immigrant, her wise words have been the goalpost for everything I've wanted to achieve, frankly, in my life. So as a former state's attorney, I going to working in the courtroom every day. I eventually was very happy and honored to be on the bench, but I was always doing something with theater. I was always an extra in a movie or doing this or doing that. And when I got on the bench, I decided that I wasn't going to go anywhere for a while. So I took one class at Northwestern, which then ended up being 2. And after the fourth one, I thought, you know what? I'm going to go back and get the degree I always wanted to get. So it took me 10 years, but I graduated. I have to share with you, summa cum laude. I was a class valedictorian because I just ate the stuff up. But it took me 10 years. I was twice as old as anybody in the class. But what's not, and I fed a lot of my fellow students, but what's nice is some of them are producers or directors or successful actors in Los Angeles now. But so that's what happened. That's why I graduated with a degree in radio, TV, film, and theater performance from Northwestern in 1994. So I was still on the bench, and I even had to get special permission as a judge to do some work in the theater. And I had an agent. So they said I could, but I could not earn a salary. And anything I would make as an actor when I was on the bench, I would have to donate or just forfeit. So I did some commercial work and theater work. What happened was when I graduated from Northwestern, I started to plot how I was going to do this to carry over into do it full time. So I retired from the bench, and when I retired from the bench,
before you go on,
yeah,
Gloria, could you tell us what kind of a judge were you? Were
criminal.
you elected?
Criminal. I was a criminal judge. In fact, I was on the bench for 17 years, and I retired as a supervising judge for all the domestic violence courts for the city of Chicago. And what's interesting is my dad graduated from Chicago Kent Law School in 1931. And I am presently an adjunct professor at Chicago Kent Law School. I teach on Thursday nights. And so my dad's picture's right in the hallway. And it's kind of interesting because 90 years later, little did he think his youngest daughter would be teaching at his law school. Things sort of come full circle.
Did he become a judge too? Did your dad become a judge?
No, my father was, he was more a civil attorney. He did a lot of real estate, some divorce work, but he was civil attorney. But, you know, it's interesting because my first position as a lawyer was with the state's attorney's office. And usually you matriculate through that system in the criminal sector. You know, there's a civil division there, but I was in the criminal sector.
Oh, very good. And let's see. did you have to run for office, or were you appointed initially? And then
Appointed.
you,
I was it's an election from the full circuits. So it is, to a good degree, yes, an election. And the difference is, when you have a general election, many people will run with not being qualified or recommended. They've got a good name, or they're fortunate to have a position. But the type of judge that you had to be found qualified. So I was with the state's attorney's office for 5 years as a prosecutor. Then I went to the Illinois Attorney General for 5 years as a prosecutor. I created the first prosecution system for what they call state benefits fraud. People who double dip. You have a job, you get laid off, whatever. You receive unemployment insurance. Then you get another job, and people don't realize it, but your social security number pops up. And that was misdemeanors, but they became felonies, so I created the first prosecution system as felonies. Then I worked for the city of Chicago for a while. So I was a practicing attorney for about 13 years before I got on the bench. Does that answer your question?
okay, in the process, you were elected as president of the Justinian Society.
Right.
Tell us a little bit about.
Well, my dad was one of the original members. And, when we go back, there weren't a lot of women in the law. And I can tell you, even when I was going to law school I started in 1974. And there weren't a lot of women.
Rosadia, I had a question.
Yes.
Yes, I do. Actually, I have a series of questions, but I have to choose one. I was thinking, Gloria, first of all, it's a real pleasure to see you again. Last time we met was here in Rome, so
Right.
I'm quite emotional about that. And I saw you perform directly the story of Alfio, which was moving for all of us. So I saw you in action as if it were, a wonderful performance at the theater. They say that you're Italian, you're Sicilian, and of course, Magna Grecia, that it's within the Italian blood, that you can perform performance competences. I was going to, and you sound a lot like having lived 1,000 lives. You know how Luigi Pirandello said he got the Nobel Prize for Literature at the beginning of the 20th century. And he said, uno nessuno centomila, one, no one, and you sound like 1,000 characters. And while I was listening to your story, I really did not recall, among the things that I knew about you, that you had some experience or some kind of profile in the teaching business. So as a school principal now, my questions are usually about my role as an educator and as a principal. In this COVID area, we are suggested to have the children perform and to get a sort of cathartical effect over the COVID process and the COVID dilemma. So what is your opinion about drama in school and drama at this very critical moment of history, and how it could sort out its effects on children, on their well-being, and whatever suggestions you would have for us in schools?
Well, as we know, even I'm teaching law school on Thursday nights, and it's all virtual. So whatever we do at this time has to be remote and virtual. However, socialization and imagination is part of growing up and very important for children, especially when they can step outside of themselves and be another character, which is what we know acting is all about. It's perfecting and channeling who that character is. What did that character have for dinner? How would that character dress? What's the background of that character? A lot of conditioning process that goes into it to become that character and to remove yourself, literally from yourself, to channel that character. So I think children's imagination is very important, and socialization, so as best as we can do it under the circumstances and how we're communicating even now, is very important and should be sought after and utilized as best as possible using technology.
Gloria, tell us about your latest acting experience with Utopia.
Okay, thank you. Well, you know, I have an agent in Chicago and I have an agent in Los Angeles. In fact, when I retired from the bench, I went out to LA and I did a showcase. And I was very fortunate to pick up an agent at the end of the showcase. In fact, it was interesting because the agent who picked me up, in fact, I was living in Chicago, and after this showcase in Los Angeles, it was a week-long boot camp. And at the end of the week, you perform for agents and managers in Los Angeles. And if you got a phone call, that was great. So after this week long, I went up to visit my family that all lives up in Northern Cal. And I was in the California Pizza Kitchen with my 8-year-old nephew, and my phone rang and it was this agent. And he said, well, you know, we'd like to represent you. And I said, well, I live in Chicago. And he said, well, you got to live in LA. So then he said, you know, I'll tell you what I liked about you. He said, you remind me of Estelle Getty. You know, petite little Estelle Getty on the Golden Girls. I was like, I'll buy it. So anyway, I went back to Chicago and I said to my husband, my wonderful husband, honey, I gotta go. I got an agent in LA. So for about 3 years, I had a commuter marriage. I went out to LA, I rented an apartment, and my husband loved it. He fell in love with Los Angeles. Wilshire Boulevard, Beverly Hills Law Library. He loved it. And I was pretty busy out there. But then I became union. And when you become, and of course, the industry has completely changed because of COVID as well. I mean, I have auditions now, but I have a green screen and a circle light, a ring light, you know, because we're not going in to do auditions. But anyway, so I have an agent in LA, and then after about 3 years, I left the house and a husband to Chicago, and I was doing some things in Chicago, but I would intermittently go to LA. So I'd be going back to LA, I don't know, every 3 months, and it was a year ago March. I was in Los Angeles having lunch with an actor friend. And my agent texted me from Agent Chicago. And she said, we have an audition for you. It's this new episodic called Utopia. I said, well, I'm in Los Angeles. And she said, self-tape it. Because today everything is self-tape. That's how this is right now. So my friend I was having lunch with said, go get the copy, memorize it. Because now everybody expects you to be what they call off book. You don't do an audition cold read anymore. You memorize it. So I did. I met her at her house. We taped it in her den and sent it to Chicago. About 2 days later, I was at O'Hare. My husband was picking me up. I flew home. And as I'm waiting for my husband to pick me up, I got another text. And it was from my agent that said they saw your tape and they want you to audition for another role. So the role I originally auditioned for was what you call an under 5. An under 5 is, another term is day player or co-star. And that means you have 5 lines or less. Okay, so day player means you're in and you're out. And you get a day player salary. Union, it's not bad. It's a pretty good salary. Maybe around 1,000, it depends, because you're union. But I got this text, and they said, well, we want you to audition for different types of roles. One was a reoccurring. And so I had like 3 scripts to memorize within 24 hours. But that's part of an actor's responsibility as well, is to work that muscle memory, no matter what age you are. You work the muscle memory. And the more you work it, the better it gets. But you got to keep it tuned. So anyway, I went in next day and I auditioned for these 3 roles, and one was a reoccurring. And I got a call back. And my agent, you know, it's exciting, but you don't know. You know, you don't know until the fat lady sings. You know, they put you on avail. Are you available for these dates? So I was available, even though I had promised a dear friend of mine that I would officiate a wedding for her in Florence, Italy. So I said, yes, I'm available, except for this 1 week in July, which I was going to be in Florence. But I said to my friend, if I book this, I think we know what I got to do. So I was very fortunate. And I ended up booking the reoccurring role. And after I booked it, the casting director said, well, now I can tell you who I was reading for in the audition. And she was reading for John Cusack. So the casting director who saw the tape, who liked me, was David Rubin, who is the casting director for Pretty Little Liars, which stars Reese Witherspoon and Nicole Kidman, and Meryl Streep has been on it. So he's the one that gave me the okay. But it's an interesting process, because when you book something like that, it's not just the agent, it's not just the casting director, it's Amazon Prime, it's the executive directors, there's a sign-off sheet that you have to go through, and there's about 6 people on the sign-off sheet who say, okay, okay, okay. So if one doesn't say okay, then they go back to who is the next in line besides this talent to book this. So it is a process, and you and it's one that I know as an actor I can tell you that you have to learn how to embrace rejection, because it's not always about whether you knew your lines or you have a talent or not. It's, do you fit the profile and what the writers had in mind for that character? It's a lot of variables, but certainly that is one that's very important. So Utopia was written by Gillian Flynn, who was the writer of Gone Girl. Sharp Objects. Sharp Objects was with Amy Adams. And Gone Girl, I think, I know her book did very, very well, and was made into a movie that did very well. But as you know, Gillian Flynn, she has a specific genre that she writes. And so Utopia was originally a UK episodic. I think there were a couple of versions. And Gillian Flynn wrote the American version. So it premiered on Amazon Prime September 25th. And I know when we shot it, I was in episodes 102, 103, and 105. And, you know, that's another thing. When you're in film, you're just hoping that even though you shot it, you don't know what's going to end up on the editing floor. So oftentimes people shoot it. Well, I shouldn't say oftentimes, but it can happen, and has, that you're hired, you book it, you shoot it, and then somehow in the editing process, that particular scene wasn't cut out, or something happens, or it's minimized. So what happened with me is the shot in 102, some of them I think were edited out, but most of them made it to episode 103. And a lot of it stayed as it was in episode 105. And leave it to my husband. So when he was watching Utopia, he said, "You're in 106 too." I said, "I am. I don't remember shooting 106." He said, "No, in 106, there's a scene where there's a TV in the background and the TV's on and you're on the TV that's on in the room." But anyway, it was an amazing experience. And I was very blessed to have that opportunity to work with and for Gillian Flynn and for all these talented actors. Most of my scenes, in fact, most of my scenes were with, well, all my scenes were with either John Cusack, a guy named Corey Smith, who was in Gotham, a number of other LA actors, and Rainn Wilson. So Rainn Wilson, and there were like a couple of night shoots. So, you know, I'm sorry I'm talking so much. Does anyone have questions or comments?
Hi, Gloria.
Go ahead,
Steve.
Ron.
Hey, how you doing, Gloria? It's good that I've known you for so long. It's Ron Onesti, by the way.
Oh, Ron, hi.
How you doing, dear? I'm sorry I'm in a bad location. I can't see
you. Hi. Yes.
Oh, good to see you. So I've known you for a long time. I've known you in the political realm and in the public realm and public service.
Right.
This whole acting thing just blows me away that you've been
Oh,
doing.
gosh, really?
I've heard, remnants of things that you were doing, but I didn't realize just how seriously you took it. So, congratulations. And you know what? I hope I'm at the Oscar ceremony one day when I'm looking up there.
But I'll tell you, it goes to show you that what my mother said to me when I was 28, when I was 25, is something that applies to all of us our entire life. You know, you're going to be whatever age you're going to be. So if you have a passion, if you have something that's so important to you, that's just a part of who you are, that you want to express in the creative artistic area, you know, you do it. Follow through your passion. Because I think like a lot of the show, you can get sidetracked. You can veer to a particular different fork in the road. But if it's something that's a part of who you are, and I swear to God, I think it started when I was 3 years old, going to the Ethel and Gertrude Morgan dancing school. You know, it's just something that becomes a part of what's inside of you as a passion of your identity. But, you know, I took different roads, but like I said, it never quite led me. You know, Finding Uncle Alfio, that play I wrote when I took playwriting at Northwestern. And then that was my one-woman show as my senior project at Northwestern. And then I performed that at a Filet Solo Festival in Chicago, along with another little vignette that I wrote called Big Adventures of Little Women.
Oh, right.
I also performed that. But what was wonderful is that, and so honorable that when Gloria Nardini and Dominic were putting together the book on Italian women, they had invited me to rewrite the story of Finding Uncle Alvio in my grandmother's voice.
How beautiful.
And that's what's in that book, rewritten in my grandmother's voice. And then I got a call from Dominic saying, Gloria, when they were doing the book tour in Italy, the one story that people were identifying with or enjoyed, connected with, was the immigration story of when my mother and her mother and little Alfio came over from Sicily, and that he died on Ellis Island. And it took us 80 years to find his grave. I want you to know that I have gone back to the cemetery and have performed Finding Uncle Alfio at the cemetery in Queens, the Maple Grove Cemetery in New York, a number of times. They filmed it, they have it in their archive, and we just put a new headstone for my uncle at his grave, which is a mass grave, along with many other children of immigrants coming to Ellis Island, and a lot of people that died from the Spanish flu during that same period of time.
That's
So
crazy.
it's a mass grave, but they gave us permission to put a beautiful plaque where my uncle's grave is. But that started, you know, at Northwestern, and then, you know, catapulted because of the invitation from Gloria and Dominic.
I would love for you to reprise this role. I'd love to do it and see it. And, you know, when we come out of this thing, maybe we can do it somewhere. And I mean, just would love to be a part of it. I would love to see it again.
I would
Absolutely.
Can I-
Absolutely. In fact, you know, we did a little bit of it at Casa. Well, we did it for the Italian Senate, right, Maria?
Right.
And then
and it was
We lost your sound just briefly.
yeah.
You're muted. Well, regardless, you know what? Like I said, I would love to be a part of it. I have to run. I only had a couple minutes. I didn't want to miss this. And so it's just so nice to see you. And thank you, Dominic, everybody, for putting this
And
together.
congratulations to you, Ron, for all you're doing
Well,
for the Italian community and what you do on a creative basis as well. You're everywhere. I love it.
well, thank you very much. But really, I'm so proud to know you. I love you very much. We go back so many years, and I can't wait to see it again. I really, really want to.
Have you seen
this.
Utopia?
No.
Okay, it's on Amazon Prime.
Yep.
It is written by Gillian Flynn. If you like that particular genre, some people are just glued to it. Others, it can be a little scary for them. But from what I understand, Jeff Bezos really liked it. And it's just through the grapevine that season 2 has already been inked.
Well, I like the.
Signed up. He's given the green light for a season 2. So just hoping that maybe they want my character, Tony Tambler, back.
Well, the genre that I like is the Coco genre. So whatever you're in is what I like. So I will check that out. I wish you the best, my dear.
Thank you.
Please stay in touch.
Oh, will do. Thanks.
All right. All the best to you and everybody on this. Bye, guys.
Okay, thanks. We'll be in touch.
Anyway, anyone have any
Yeah,
questions about what it was like?
Gloria.
Please, Carla.
Yeah, it's Carla. I just wanted to say a couple of things. One, that idea of following your heart. There's a very famous Italian novel, Va dove ti porta il cuore, Go Where the Heart Brings You, really resonates with me because I started out in a different field and I was a little older when I went back to graduate school to get the PhD. And there was a point there where people thought I was crazy and they're like, why are you doing this? And I said, I don't know really, except that it's in my heart. I don't know where it's going to lead, but this is something I want to do. So, and I had supportive people around me that allowed me that. And with my students, they're reading Natalia Ginsburg right now, the beautiful Italian writer, and she has a beautiful essay that's called, in English, My Vocation, in which she talks about how she was called to be a writer and there was nothing else. It was not just her job, it was who she was. So that idea is so important. The other thing I wanted to say is I would love to bring, I mean, the story about Uncle Alfie was the one that touched me the most in that volume as well. And I had talked before COVID about reprising the production of that and bringing you to Loyola and doing it in conjunction with one of the courses that I'm teaching on Italian American literature. So hopefully we can do that. You've been so busy and I'm so glad for that because it means things are going really well with your career. But I would just like to second what Ron Onesti said is that I would love to revive that production and bring it back and make it part of the curriculum. Do something like we've done in the past, co-sponsored with Casa Italia, have one that's more geared towards the students and you know, some way to bring it together. So I hope we can keep in touch about that moving forward.
So, you know, the run of that one woman show runs about 25 minutes. I have a few props. I have the props. You know, so when we're able to talk more about it and do it, love to. It would be my honor. Lost your audio.
May I ask you something, Gloria?
Of course.
Oh, yes, I was muted. I muted myself. I'm so sorry, but I was willing to join in on Ron's intervention about you. Yes, it was amazing to see you perform that piece of your life, though you did not experience yourself, but you really empathized with your family story. My question, the other question I was going to ask you, Sicilian dialect in your performances. For instance, performing your Uncle Alfio's sad story and such a real, a moving story in the Sicilian dialect. Have you considered that?
No, I would. And unfortunately, I do not speak Italian or Sicilian. And why? Because when I was growing up, my parents would speak it all the time. My father would go to Italian classes, but my parents always spoke Italian when they didn't want us kids to know quite what they were talking about. So my sisters and I always say, if they only would have taught us, even though it was a dialect, I don't think it's a dialect. The Sicilian is a different language. It's our own language. But unfortunately, I don't speak it, but I certainly would consider. And my grandmother's tongue. If I'm my grandmother, I would use that tongue. She's one character.
Yes, because there is this idea also in Italy about reviving and revaluing the dialects as part of the Italian heritage beside the standard language. So I was supposing that maybe you could also perform in the dialect, but then again, you would need somebody to teach you the dialect back. This is an experience I went through my own life, because I was told, well, forget your dialects, the Sicilian one on behalf of my father and the Neapolitan or Salernitano one on behalf of my mom. And that is linguistically wrong, because the best way to pick up Italian, if it's a second language or whatever second language, whatever first language you know, either a dialect or another idiom, would be, according to Jim Cummings, to value that first native language, which we always keep in our hearts and comes natural to us. So I would love to see you perform that in Sicilian. Really, Gloria, I must be honest. Thank you.
Well, I know that I'm surrounded by a lot of great teachers. And I wish I know it's a deficit. I know it's a deficit.
Gloria, instead of saying, povero piccolo mio, you would say, lupicirido mio. That has a different effect.
Yes.
Lucaroso mio, lupicirido mio. Non c'è più lupicirido. I see more of an effect in that.
Well, would I have the script translated into Italian, and then someone coach me how to pronounce it correctly? But then, if my audience is in English, I think they'd be lost. That would be something.
I just wanted to comment too on the dialect and the standard. I mean, I had to go to school to learn the Italian I speak, and I speak the Italian that I learned from a book, and I've been told I speak like a book, and that's okay. I can speak and I can read, and it's given me access to a whole different, I couldn't do the work I do if I hadn't learned Italian, so I'm really grateful to that. But the question with the dialects, obviously the way I speak is not exactly how my great-grandparents would have spoken, who were from the Lazio, Provincia di Frosinone. And the idea also in Italy as well, like when the recent Elena Ferrante's work has been turned into a series, which is on HBO. It's in English also, but they actually made an artistic decision to have all the characters speak in the Neapolitan dialect, which to me makes it much more authentic and original to Maria Rosaria's point. But Ferrante herself had made an artistic choice to write in the standard Italian. So her characters within the novel don't speak that way, and yet for the screen, they chose to transpose it like that. And the result is that they've had to put subtitles in the Italian, not just in English, but in the Italian version that was presented on Italian TV, where they're speaking in Neapolitan, there are standard Italian subtitles at the bottom of the screen. So, you know, these different linguistic levels and how they play out and who has access to them and why. Some of my Italian friends were complaining about that. They found it distracting to have they said the Neapolitan was close enough they could probably understand it, and they thought it was more distracting than helpful to have the character speaking that way. So it's interesting the debates it provokes about how we speak and why and what context we choose to communicate and what register. So just wanted to comment.
Whatever it is, Carla, I think it's the most beautiful language. And I feel badly that I can't speak Italian. I mean, because my relatives all spoke it, but I think I was growing up in a generation where they wanted you to speak American, American, not English, American, you know what I mean? But I have to tell you, when everything and everyone is accomplished here, when we look at our Italian heritage, our Sicilian heritage, I know that when people say, where did this come from for you? I have to say it was from my immigrant mother and my father. Now, my father was born with he had infantile paralysis. When he was 6 months old, he was born in 1906, his family realized that he had polio. And in 1906, there was no cure. He was as a kid, he had crutches, but he still played baseball. And his family was going to set him up to be a cobbler. There's a term you haven't heard. They thought he'd be a cobbler. But my father was blessed with a passion, a brain, and he ended up going to Chicago Kent Law School, walking with a cane and a brace and a cane. And I still have this desk that his family gave to him when he graduated from law school. It's a very special piece of furniture to me. But they thought he'd be a cobbler. And same thing with my mother. She was the one that had the passion that was like, you're going to get an education. So whatever my mother did not have growing up,
that's all right.
She'd be sure that her daughter had. So when I think of the passions and where does this come from, it came from the seed of my ancestors. It came from generations before. That how did my widowed 40-year-old grandmother get on a boat in 1921 on the USS Sophia, come to America, was detained on Ellis Island for 3 months because she didn't have enough money to get through. They thought she'd be awarded the state because she was a widow and had a limp, walked with a limp with two kids. So they wouldn't let her in. That's why she was detained for 3 months, and within 10 days, her little Alfio dies of scarlet fever, a bug he contracted in steerage. And because of the language, no one ever told my grandmother what he died of or what they did with his body. So it was my mother's deathbed wish in 1993. Find out what happened to my little brother. All these years he's been alone somewhere and we don't know where. So it was about 2 years after my mother died that we found out that he was buried in a mass grave in Queens, New York. So you think, how did my grandmother do that? I remember my mother telling me that when she came back on the boat from Ellis Island to New York, my grandmother just lost it. But where's the strength that she survived and lived to be 86 and remarried, and that my mother did the same? Where does that come from? And so whatever I think any of us do in our lives, whatever we've accomplished, I think we really have to go back to what's in our blood and our DNA.
Gloria, I
Can you
could,
hear me now?
yes.
Very good. Okay. Thanks. Oh, Gloria, it's just such a joy to hear you and to hear your story. We need it so badly today and in this really difficult time. I just think your message to women, let's just use to women of a certain age, is so vital. We just can't stop doing what we were meant to do, and we can't let discouragement stop us. So this was just music to my ears, and I continue to hope that the Italian American Theater of Chicago will soon be back up and running sometime when we get that vaccine and we feel safe congregating. And I would just love to be part of bringing that beautiful story about your uncle, you know, to the Chicago stage in some way or another. So please hang in there with us.
Okay,
We're just
absolutely.
in, you know, suspended animation like so many theater companies are.
Yes, that's one of my purposes in life is to bring creative people together in the service of the Italian American culture. So let's keeping on that. And I noticed also that Ron Onesti was on this call, and that certainly Ron can help bring a lot of this of our work to the public, and we can all benefit from it by having a better sense of who we are. Any other questions? Some people haven't had a chance. Not
Do you have any
everybody at
questions
once.
about Utopia or shooting Utopia?
Yeah, I would. That's a question I
Do you have any-
wanted to know.
what question do you have?
Well, what was it like being on the set, and how did you navigate something relatively new to you?
I've done productions before like that in Los Angeles. Uh, I was a co-star on Southland, uh, Water and Elves. So I've done film before. Uh, not as much here as in LA, but so it wasn't completely foreign to me. Uh, so that was fortunate, but I was very grateful to book this terrific role. You know what? It's a responsibility. You have a call time. You have a director. You have lines that you have to know. I know it was before you even start, you have to go to wardrobe and they fit your character for what they think the character would wear. They do your hair. And then the producer and the director, they see it and they choose which look they want for you, for your character. When you have a call time, like I remember we did a couple of night shoots. My call time was 5:30. We shot most of the major scenes at 2 in the morning. We
2
were
in the
not released
morning.
till 4 in the morning.
Oh,
So,
that's
you know, it's your responsibility to, in fact, it was great because Starbucks just came out with this new drink called Nitro. I went out, I bought like 4 big things of Nitro. I had them in the trailer because your responsibility is to do your scene and to take adjustments. Now, when I was in Los Angeles, I have to share this with you. I took a class from a terrific acting teacher, Brian Reese, and he even taught George Clooney and a number of actors who've done very well, Brian Reese. And one of the classes that he was adamant about and drumming this into you is adjustments. What's an adjustment? You can know your lines, but when you're on set, the director may want to change everything. And that happened to me. That happens to most actors. So, like for an example, an adjustment is, and this is really what they want to make sure an actor can do, is if you have a certain way of doing something, if the director says, okay, now I want you to do it like you're angry, or do it like you know this person from 10,000 years ago, and they're, you know, so they change your intention, and you have to be able to adjust to that new facet of that character. That's how they know you'd be able to work with a particular director, and that makes you an attractive finalist for maybe a particular role.
Yeah,
So in this-
I saw one episode in which you came charging into the place, calling out the owner for bad practices
That
or
was
something.
John Cusack.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
you're a pretty mean broad.
I'm an FDA agent. I'm the G. I have the power. At 4'10" and a half, I have the power to that 6-foot guy. I can shut him down, which is what I did. So you go there, you become that character, you know? Now,
Uh-huh.
my experience as being a judge, did I draw upon that when someone's in your courtroom and you have a defense attorney who's arguing with you and you say, counsel, when I give a ruling, that's not an invitation for further argument, call the next case. You draw upon your experiences from life. That's where you go to as that actor. What have you experienced in life that identifies with the attributes of that character? So I remember in one scene, the director gave me like 5 adjustments. Forget the last line. When Ray Wilson says the word bureaucrat, have a reaction to it. When you say your last line, say it when you're walking out. And that's where your muscle memory and what you've learned of that skill set in class draws upon you, and you just have to register it and do it as best you can. And hopefully you're doing it in less than 3 takes, because then everybody on the set will like you.
Well, thank you very much, Gloria. You've been very engaging and very pleased. We're looking for great things from you. Maybe you could be Rosa, the Italian-American woman of Rosa Cassaterri. We'll have to make sure you get a copy of that book.
I
Anyhow,
want to thank you. I want to thank you, Dominic, for inviting me and let me sharing this with all of you, my experience, and you know, and just to believe in whatever passion you have. Remember, you're going to be whatever age you are, and age often is not, it's irrelevant, because let your passion guide you, and all the wonderful things we have as a part of our Italian and Sicilian DNA. It counts. Thank you so
here,
much.
here. Ciao, everyone.
Ciao, Gloria. Grazie.